What if everything you've been doing to feel better, the pushing away, the controlling, the white-knuckling through difficult emotions, is actually the very thing keeping you stuck? In Chapter 16 of The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer introduces one of the most quietly radical ideas in the entire book. He calls it the spiritual path of non-resistance. And at first it sounds almost too simple. Don't fight what arises inside you. Don't resist your thoughts, your fears, your discomfort. Just let it be there. But simple doesn't mean easy, because most of us have spent our entire lives doing the opposite. We've built whole personalities around managing what we feel, avoiding what scares us, and pushing down what makes us uncomfortable. And Singer says that effort, that constant management, is costing us everything. In this chapter, he lays out a different way, not a path of suppression, not a path of indulgence, but a path of genuine surrender. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why non-resistance might just be the most powerful spiritual practice available to you right now. Let's get into it. Singer opens this chapter by asking us to look honestly at what we actually do when something uncomfortable arises inside us. Maybe it's anxiety before a difficult conversation. Maybe it's grief that surfaces unexpectedly. Maybe it's just a low hum of unease that you can't quite name. And he points out something most of us never stop to examine. We resist it. We brace against it. We tell ourselves it shouldn't be there. We try to think our way out of it. We distract ourselves. We suppress it. We argue with it internally. And here's what Singer wants us to see: that resistance is not neutral. It's not just a coping mechanism that leaves things as they are. Resistance is itself an act that creates suffering. When you push against an inner experience, you're not making it go away. You're actually locking it in place. You're giving it something to push back against. You're creating friction where there could be flow. Singer uses the analogy of a thorn. If you have a thorn in your side, the pain of that thorn is real. But if you build your entire life around not bumping that thorn, if you stop sitting certain ways, stop doing certain activities, start managing every situation to protect that one tender spot, then the thorn begins to run your life. That's what resistance does. It takes a passing inner experience and turns it into something that defines and limits everything you do. The spiritual path of non-resistance begins with simply recognizing this pattern, seeing that the problem isn't the feeling. The problem is what we do with it. Singer spends real time in this chapter on something he calls blocked energy, and this is worth sitting with. He describes the human psyche as something that is naturally in motion. Thoughts arise and pass, emotions move through us, sensations come and go. This is the natural rhythm of inner life. But when we resist something, when we clamp down and refuse to let an experience move through us, that energy doesn't disappear. It gets stored. It gets lodged in the body and the mind as a kind of chronic tension. And over time, these blocked pockets of energy accumulate. They become the weight we carry. They become the walls of the heart that Singer talks about throughout the book. What's important here is understanding the cost. Resistance is not free. Every time you push something down, every time you brace against an uncomfortable thought or feeling, you are spending energy, real energy. And you never fully recover it because part of your awareness is now permanently allocated to keeping that thing suppressed. Singer describes this as a kind of inner housekeeping that never ends. You're constantly monitoring, managing, adjusting, and all of that takes a toll. It leaves less energy for presence, for joy, for genuine connection. The spiritual path of non-resistance is in part about recovering that energy. It's about allowing what has been blocked to finally move through and release, so that the energy that was locked up becomes available again. Not as a dramatic purge, but as a gradual, ongoing process of letting go. Here's where Singer anticipates the most common objection. When people hear the word surrender or non-resistance, they often hear weakness. They think it means giving up, going limp, letting life walk all over you. Singer is very clear that this is not what he means. Surrender, in his framework, is not passive. It is one of the most active and courageous things a person can do. What he's asking you to surrender is not the situation. It's not your boundaries or your values or your ability to take action in the world. What you're surrendering is your internal resistance to what is already happening inside you. There's a crucial distinction there. The feeling of fear has already arisen. The anxious thought is already present. Resistance doesn't undo that. It just adds a second layer of suffering on top of the first. Surrender means you stop adding that second layer. You stop fighting with your own inner experience. And Singer points out that this actually requires tremendous inner strength, because the instinct is to resist. The ego's entire job is to manage, control, and protect. To override that instinct, to consciously choose to remain open instead of closing down. That is not weakness. That is mastery. The spiritual path of non-resistance calls you to be strong enough to be soft, to be grounded enough to remain open. Singer frames this as the difference between someone who is tossed around by every inner storm and someone who has learned to let the storm pass through without being swept away. That steadiness, that is what surrender produces. So what does this look like in practice? Singer is thoughtful here because he knows that telling someone to just let go doesn't actually help them let go. He describes the practice in terms of the observer, the part of you that can watch what's happening inside without being consumed by it. When a difficult emotion arises, the practice is to notice it from that place of inner witnessing. To say inwardly something is happening. There's a contraction here, there's fear here, there's sadness here. And to let yourself feel that, really feel it, without either pushing it away or grabbing onto it and feeding it with more thought. The key movement is relaxation. Singer talks about consciously relaxing the area around the discomfort. Instead of bracing and tensing, you breathe into it, you soften around it, you allow the energy to exist without fighting it. And in that allowing, something interesting happens. The experience begins to move, because energy in motion naturally wants to flow. It's only resistance that keeps it stuck. He also addresses something important here, that sometimes when you relax and allow, things will feel more intense before they feel better. An old grief might surge. A deep anxiety might temporarily swell. Singer says this is not a sign that the practice is failing. It's a sign that something that was blocked is finally moving. Stay with it. Let it pass through. The practice is not about being unaffected. It's about being willing to feel fully without holding on. Singer closes this chapter with a vision of what life looks like on the other side of resistance, and it is genuinely beautiful. When you stop spending your energy fighting your inner experience, something remarkable becomes available. You begin to move through life with a quality of openness that most people only glimpse in rare, unguarded moments. The things that used to derail you, a critical comment, a sudden wave of sadness, and unexpected anxiety, they still arise. But they don't land the same way, because you're no longer at war with them. Singer describes this as the beginning of genuine spiritual freedom. Not freedom from experience, but freedom within experience. You can feel fully and still remain centered. You can be moved without being overwhelmed. And this is where the spiritual path of non-resistance reveals its deepest gift. It's not just about feeling better day to day, though you will. It's about a fundamental shift in who you take yourself to be. When you stop identifying with every inner experience, when you stop being the one who must manage and resist, you begin to rest in the awareness behind all of it, the quiet space that observes without judgment. Singer calls this coming home, and the way home, he's been saying throughout this book, is not through more control. It is through less resistance, through the radical, courageous act of acceptance, not of circumstances necessarily, but of this moment's inner reality, exactly as it is. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with this chapter today. This one has some genuinely quiet depth to it, and it deserves to be read slowly. If something in this video stirred something for you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Specifically, is there one area of your life where you notice you're holding on, resisting something internally, and wondering what it might feel like to finally just let it move through? I'm genuinely curious what comes up for you. If this kind of slow, thoughtful exploration of spiritual ideas resonates with you, consider subscribing. We're working through the Untethered Soul chapter by chapter, and there's more coming. Thanks for being here.